Hi guys, Erin here. This week you'll be learning about some of the factors to consider when selecting participants for a research study. In this video, you'll learn about why it's so important for your sample of participants to be representative of the target population. In the next videos, you'll learn about how many participants to select and different ways of selecting participants. Here's where this video and this week fits into the context of our course and of the whole research process. So we do research, obviously, to answer some research question, and we can invite everyone in the whole world to participate. But who you select to participate is really important. It will impact your results and the conclusion that you can draw from your research. This is just like what we talked about last week, that similarly, the way that we operationalize and measure our variables will impact our results too. So typically, a small group of individuals is selected to participate in a study. We want to ensure that that sample of people is a good representation of the population that we're interested in. This is really important because the outcome of our study depends on how we select the participants. Our goal is to generalize from our sample, that small set of participants, to the larger population. And the only way that we can do that is if that sample of people shares the features of that general population. So here we can see it in a schematic. The population is all of the people that the researcher is interested in studying. Here it's at them at the top. The sample are the specific set of participants who actually do your study. Our sample is selected from the population, and the results from our sample we're going to use to generalize and draw conclusions that hopefully would apply to all of the people in that population. So to generalize, we have to select a sample of people that are representative of the population. A major threat to selecting a representative sample is bias. A biased sample is a sample of people that have characteristics that are noticeably different from those in the target population. So individuals in the sample may be more well off, older, faster, smarter, etc. This is a problem. And it's called selection bias, also called sampling bias. When participants are selected in such a way that increases the chances of obtaining a biased sample. And this actually happens a lot because participants are usually selected by researchers. The participants that are usually selected tend to be participants' friends, tend to be friends of the researchers, or maybe the kids of friends of the researcher. And they may have features that are different than the general population. They may be more educated, have a higher IQ. Actually, they say that most of what we know about human natures come from studies that were done on white rats and white undergrad female students. So when you're doing your own research, you want to try to be aware of this, and you want to do what you can to avoid the selection bias. And you also want to look for it in the papers that you read as well, so that you can be critical of the conclusions that they draw. So let's give an example for all of this. Imagine you're interested in studying the impact of class size on kindergarteners' pre-literacy skill development. So how well they can recognize letters and hear the sounds of words. Who would you select to participate? Where would you recruit those people from? And how many participants would you need? Well, these are important questions to ask because you want to make sure that the kindergarteners who actually do your study are representative of all kindergarteners in general. Our sample needs to be representative of both the target population, so this might be all kindergarteners in the Western world, and they also need to be, but we can't test everybody in the world, so we're going to have access to only a subset of that. We call this the accessible population. This might be kindergarteners in Southwestern Ontario or kindergarteners who are in the Niagara District School Board, for example. You can see our sample is embedded in that. So maybe we would select two groups of kindergarteners from large and small classes in Niagara schools. So you can see that our sample is embedded in both the accessible and the target population. We want to have our sample share features that are in the target population and the accessible population in order for our results to generalize. So suppose this was our sample of children, our kindergarteners. We would want to make sure that features such as how many girls or boys we recruited, what their family background is, what their ethnic background is, that sample of that participate in our study is representative of the kindergarteners in Niagara, in Ontario, in the world in general. Why do you think this is so important? Why is it important to have a representative sample? What characteristics are maybe important to consider in this example? I want you to think about this. Imagine we selected our participants, our samples, from schools that were only in extremely well-off neighborhoods. Would our sample be representative of the target population of kindergarteners in Niagara in general? In what ways may our results be impacted? When I asked this to our class 2P52 last year, and I asked them to think about what are some of the features that maybe differentiate between kids that come from well-off neighborhoods and kids that come from poorer neighborhoods that may impact their early literacy skills, they gave all kinds of great answers. Maybe you can think of some too. They suggested that maybe the nutrition is different in well-off neighborhoods versus poorer neighborhoods. Maybe the quality of daycare that the kids had leading up to kindergarten is also different. Maybe the education level of the parents is different. The amount that they have time and the resources available to read to their kids. All of these factors could differentiate between kids in well-off versus poorer neighborhoods. And if we only selected our sample of participants from that well-off neighborhood, well, our results may actually be very different than if we had included a more representative sample and it had recruited people from both the poorer neighborhoods and the more well-off neighborhoods. If we only tested people from well-off neighborhoods, we might find that class size really doesn't make a difference because they have all of those extra supports at home. Whereas if we had had a more representative sample, maybe our results would be that kids' pre-literacy skills are faster to develop if they are in smaller class sizes. So you can see that the results of the study is very, very dependent on the people that actually went into that study. And if we're going to, the whole point of doing research is to come up with conclusions that can be generalized to other people and places and contexts. We want to make sure that the people who participate in our study are representative of those people as well. So to summarize, we want to select a sample of participants that's representative of the target population. We want to try to avoid selection biases in the research we do. And when you are reading research studies, you should look at the features of the participants and ask yourself whether you think that they're representative of the target population. That's all for this video. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.